Have you ever gone back to something from your childhood just to see if it holds up still? Like maybe watched a Barbie movie, or like My Little Pony, or like Adventure Time or Young Justice. You know. Well, my childhood obsession was Bionicle. Yeah. Yeah, I love Bionicle. And I followed it every year it came out until it finished its run in 2010. And today, I'm going to talk about my favorite Bionicle team, the Toa Inika. Why they're my favorite Bionicle team? They got lasers. Haha.
When all you gotta keep is strong, move along like I know you do.
Yeah. They were sick. And before we get into this, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of background about what Bionicle is and what it's all about. Because it's kind of a lot. Like,
It's a lot?
it had like a whole bunch of books, it had comics, it had movies, it had web comics and like side stories and stuff like that. I don't know all of them. I'm not gonna claim to be a Bionicle lore expert. I had to look this up. So I'm just gonna give you guys just a brief rundown of what you need to know before going into this. First, what's Bionicle about? Well, it's really just like a bunch of legends. It's just like a fun comic, essentially. And it's about teams of what are called Toa. They're like elemental superheroes, essentially. And they wear masks that give them powers. And the mask powers don't necessarily correspond with their elemental powers. So you can be a Toa of Fire and have a mask that gives you telepathy, you know? So, stuff like that. We're going to be focusing on the Toa Inika. There's also Matoran. They're basically villagers. They don't have elemental powers, but they do have some enhanced abilities related to their elements. So, Fire Matoran are heat resistant. Water Matoran have increased lung capacity. So on and so forth. Turaga, they're kind of like Matoran. They're former Toa. So, they have minor elemental powers, and they still have minor mask powers, essentially. Turaga are former Toa, and they tend to be village elders once a Toa becomes a Turaga, and they lead the Matoran of their village. Now, with that out of the way, time to get into this little storyline. So we start off with the Toa Nuva, who are they're like the Justice League, essentially. They're like the big Toa that are present throughout all the storylines in some way or another, and they've gone missing. They were searching for the Mask of Life in order to heal the Great Being. Yes, the Great Being. So they're trying to save the Great Being by using the Mask of Life. And the Great Being is essentially their god. How they see him. And this group of Matoran, led by Jala, with the aid of the Toa of Light, Takanuva, go out on a quest to go find the Toa Nuva. Takanuva dips out early because they come across this shadow gate or whatever that doesn't let light pass through it. So Takanuva can't continue on, so he's like,
Peace. See you guys later.
So now, without any real combatant with them, these 6 Matoran have to go find the main Toa team. So they're screwed. While looking for the Toa, they land on the island of Karzani, led by a ruler of the same name. Now, this ruler isn't like a Toa or anything. He's his own thing. If you want to look up the lore about him, you can. He's got lore. He's the ruler of this island, and they call this place
The land of the dead.
because all the Matoran here are just decrepit, just dead on the inside. They're basically like walking husks. And they say that this is where they send Matoran who don't do their work, essentially. Or don't do their work well enough. Which is kind of awful to think about. That their entire lives revolve around work. And so Karzani does with Jala and his crew, like he does with anyone who comes on this, who comes on his island. He takes their masks and tortures them by showing them alternate realities, like horrible alternate realities. This is a kid's property, by the way. They do have, like, psychological torture. And so Holly, she's the Water Matoran, she's a chronicler, which is essentially a historian. So Holly tells Karzani of like all of these tales of the outside world in order to distract him while the rest try and find a way to escape. They come across a Matoran who builds Toa canisters, which is what Toa used to travel between islands in this world, and they convince the Matoran to let them use them. They also find out that this land isn't for, like, bad workers where they get sent to. It's actually just a repair shop. Broken Matoran go to Karzani to get repaired. And it kind of just fell apart. So now they're trying to escape. And Karzani, the person, doesn't like that. He doesn't like the idea of people escaping his island for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why anyone would want to leave this torturous hellscape. But they decide to escape. And Motoro decides, hey, Karzani, show us the worst possible reality. And Karzani shows them the apocalypse. He shows them what would happen if the Great Being died. And traumatizes everyone, including himself. And the Matorans use this opportunity to get into the canisters and escape to Voyanui, their original destination. They escape. They manage to arrive on Voyanui, they wash up ashore, and this mysterious red star in the sky shoots down lightning and hits their canisters and transform them into Toa. Now, this isn't how Toa normally become Toa. This is how a Matoran becomes a Toa normally. Normally, Matoran gets a Toa stone and they take it to a certain place, and if they were chosen to become a Toa, they become a Toa. This is a little different just from that. And so their powers are a little different too. To first start off, they have electricity powers along with whatever elemental power that they have. So Jala, he's the Toa of Fire now, and he can shoot electricity and fire. He has fire, electricity flowing through his flames and stuff like that. So that's cool. And their masks are organic, which means that they hurt them. Their masks are alive, and they can communicate to the Toa by hurting them. Gotta love that. But it's not all bad, though, because it lets them learn how to use their Toa powers quicker. So, like, at least they have that. So, they're not going in just completely not knowing anything. So, they're at least proficient with their powers early on. So, they climb out of their canisters. They're Toa now. They learn their powers through the pain that their masks inflict upon them. And they find some Matoran on this island. And the Matoran say,
Hey! These warlords called the Baraka! They've enslaved us! And they're looking for the Mask of Life! Woo!
and they're heroes, so they have to, of course, put a stop to it. So they split into 3 groups. And each group has 2 Toa and 2 Matoran. So Jala and Holly group up to go save the enslaved Matoran on the island. Huki and Motoro leave to go find Axon, who might be a useful ally, and knows Brutaka, who they were told beat the Toa Nuva and is holding them captive. And Kongu and Nuparu leave to go infiltrate the Paraka stronghold and find the Toa Nuva. So Huki and Motoro find Axon. Axon is beaten, and he tells them to stop Brutaka before it's too late. And Huki and Kongu don't get very far in the stronghold before finding themselves in trouble. But fortunately, the other Toa are there to save them, just in time. So the Matoran leave to go find the Toa Nuva, and the red and white Paraka, I'm not going to give you names because there's already a lot of names to remember. The red and white Paraka steal Brutaka's power and harness it for themselves. And the Toa Inika make a temporary pact with the rest of the Paraka, being like, hey, so like, I know you guys don't want all of Butaka's power going to these two, so you want to help us take them out real quick? Like, we can be enemies again later. We just don't want, like, I'm sure you guys don't want these two in charge. And they agree. They, being like power-hungry warlords themselves. And so, they find the red and white Parakas fighting, because one wants all the power. And they take this advantage to ambush them, and they use a special Zamor sphere, which is basically just a bullet. They use a special Zamor sphere that will steal Brutaka's power from them and give it back to Brutaka. This causes a giant explosion and knocks everyone out. Just before this, Axon tells Jala, hey, use this special Zamor sphere in case of an emergency. It's not the one that they use against the Paraka, it's a different one. And Axon stays with Brutaka while they go to fight the Parakas, and Axon just tends to his buddy, who is weak now. So, fast forward back, they beat the Paraka, they wake up, the Paraka are gone, this entrance opened up in the earth, the staircase leading down, and they suspect that it leads to the Mask of Life, because that's what the Paraka are after. So they follow it down the staircase, and as they're descending the staircase, visions of an old Toa, Toa Inika, appear. And the Toa basically says, oh, turn back now. Woo! Woo! So yeah, they don't listen to the Toa. He disappears. And they also get visions of enemies that they fought. Like just different enemies from previous years of Bionicle. And they try to subdue these enemies, but they end up just killing them. And these enemies that they just killed turn into the Toa. And it's kind of just like this traumatic, scarring event in their lives. Because this is a kids franchise. And it turns out they were just illusions. But, yeah, still traumatic. And they arrive in the Chamber of Death afterwards. And in the Chamber of Death, a mysterious voice calls out to them and says,
Hey, can one of you sacrifice yourselves? I need one of you. Any takers? You can't get past without sacrificing yourself.
And so, Jala, being the leader, attempts to offer himself up. But he has like a quick PTSD moment from previous stuff that's happened to him as a Matoran, and hesitates. And Matoro steps up instead and says, hey, I'll sacrifice myself. I'll do it for you guys. And the voice says,
Okay.
and Matoro gets dissolved. And then he comes back. And the voice says,
You know, it's okay. I didn't need you to die. It's the thought that counts.
so they make it through. They continue past the chamber. And in the next chamber, they have a boss fight. Yeah! And this guy, he's sick. So they originally think that they're gonna be fighting these like creatures made out of like microorganisms that combine to make like one big one. They think they're gonna be fighting that. And then Umbra rushes in. And he's so cool. He's got like skates and a double-sided laser spear. And he can control light, but he's not a Toa, because he's too cool to be a Toa. And he can turn himself into light, and he's so awesome. And Matoro, he's a clever little sneak. He covers the floor in ice. That way, Umbra can't use his feet to skate around, because they're wheels, they're not ice skates. Matoro freezes the ground. Umbra can't use his skates to move around without slipping. So Umbra turns into a beam of light, and he fights that way. But Matoro creates these reflective pillars of ice and causes Umbra to bounce all over these reflective pillars and basically stuns him. And they beat him that way. Like, it's a little lame, not gonna lie, to see this awesome guy, this who can turn into a beam of light, just get defeated like that. But, you know, it's gonna happen. The Toa need to fulfill their destiny. So they make it past Umbra, and they get into the final chamber. And in this final chamber is none other than Vaison and the Paraka. The Paraka got destroyed by Vaison. And Vaison, he's like a Paraka as well. He's got the teeth like a Paraka. But he also has the Mask of Life embedded into him. It's like in his head. And he's like silver with a black cape, and he looks badass. And he's got this pet spider called Fenrak. And they have the power to manipulate kinetic energy. So if you try to hit them, they can just like negate any damage that would be dealt to them. And that's sick. I love that. They have a hard time fighting him, but they finally corner him onto a cliff that's overlooking like a bunch of lava. And Vaison tells Fenrak to jump. And Fenrak jumps. And then Vaison jumps. And Jala tries to chase after them because he's got fire powers. He's not worried about any lava. But then emerges the Carta Dragon and Vaison. Vaison used the Mask of Life to transform his spider into a dragon, which is so cool. And Jala's like, we're fucked. We can't fight these guys. Huki, can you, like, use your mask's telepathy powers to, like, communicate to the Mask of Life? And Huki's like, oh shit, I can! What? Mask of Life, what do you want to say? And the Mask of Life is like,
I don't like Vaison, he's kind of a dick. But I like Matoro. Can I be with Matoro instead?
and Vaison's pissed. He doesn't like hearing that. He just got dumped by a mask. So, like, Vaison's having an anger fit, and Jala takes this opportunity to use a special Zamor sphere that Axon gave him, and shoots Vaison with it. And what the Zamor sphere does is it freezes time. Not all time, it's like just time for like whatever it hits. So Vaison and Carta are frozen. They remove the Mask of Life from Vaison, and Carta gets an opportunity to swipe at Motoro, who's taking the mask, and Motoro drops it. But doesn't fall. Instead, it floats and flies away. This is what they were tasked to go find. So they chase after the mask. They leave the Paraka, they leave Vaison and Carta, and they follow it to the Bay of Wainui. And the mask flies into the water. Holly, the water Toa, chases after it, dives for it, tries so hard to get it, but the water pressure becomes too much for her, and she begins to drown. How a toe of water drowns, I'm unsure of. Like, I would expect a toe of water to have water breathing. But that's unfortunate. You can't win everything. You can't control all water. But Holly begins to drown, and a Matoran, not from above, but from below, swims up, gets Holly, brings her to shore, and is like about to die, and in his dying breath he begs the Toa Inika to save his underwater city, and dies. Afterwards, they meet up with the Toa Nuva, who have been found, and the Toa Nuva are like, good job guys, but it's your duty, it's your destiny to find the Mask of Life. So we're gonna leave that to you. And Axon uncovers a passage that leads to he uncovers a passage that leads deep underwater. And that's the Toa Inika storyline, like in a nutshell. It's cool. It's really fun to go back to Bionicle lore just to see like how much I missed as a kid, like how much I just didn't understand, because I didn't read like a lot of the books growing up. I read the comics because I got the Lego magazine, but I didn't read any of the books, so I missed out on a lot of lore. So it's really cool to like read back up on it, and there's a lot. There's a lot. Are there any franchises from your childhood that have ever gone back to? Let me know in the comments. And if you like Bionicle lore videos as much as I do, leave a like, let me know, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. Until next time, listen to that one All-American Rejects song from the marketing. It was fun. It was a fun time. See ya.